I caught my fiance sexting 5 different guys while I was sleeping right next to her in our bed in Atlanta. She thought she could hide the filth she was consuming on Reddit, but my gut never lies. For months, I've been having these recurring dreams of her in another man's arms, and tonight, the nightmare became my reality. I trusted her with my life, and she repaid me by scrolling through subreddits of guys that looked nothing like me. The woman I was going to marry turned out to be a total stranger living a double life behind a screen. There's no coming back from what I saw on that screen tonight. I looked at her sleeping face and realized the person I loved doesn't exist. She's been gaslighting me for weeks, telling me I'm crazy for having these dreams, all while she was sending photos to strangers. Now I'm sitting here in the dark, holding the evidence of her betrayal, and I'm deciding how to burn her world down. The betrayal isn't just the porn, it's the 5 different men she was actively engaging with while telling me she loved me. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice she made over and over again while I was fighting for us. My name is Marcus. I'm 31 years old and I work as a senior operations manager for a logistics firm here in the heart of Atlanta. I've spent my career building things, making sure systems run perfectly, and ensuring that when someone makes a promise, they deliver. I thought I had built a solid foundation with Elena. We've been together for 8 months, and 3 months ago, I put a ring on her finger. I thought I knew who she was. I thought we were building a life together. But the truth is, I was living in a house of cards that she was ready to blow down the second I turned my back. It started with the dreams. I'm not a superstitious guy, and I don't usually put much stock in what my subconscious cooks up while I'm out cold. But these were different. They were vivid. In the dreams, Elena was always just out of reach, laughing with men I didn't recognize, men who looked nothing like me. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, and I'd look over at her, sleeping peacefully. I felt like a monster for even thinking it. I felt like I was failing her by having these intrusive thoughts. When I finally gathered the courage to tell her about them, she just laughed it off. She told me I was being insecure. She told me she loved me and that she would never do anything to jeopardize what we had. She looked me straight in the eye and lied with the precision of a professional. For the last month, things have been strained. We haven't been able to see each other as much because of some heavy personal issues on her side. Her family, they don't exactly approve of me. They've been whispering in her ear, trying to pull her away. And for a few weeks, her father even banned me from their house. It felt like the world was trying to tear us apart, and I was the only one fighting to keep us together. I was working 12-hour shifts, dealing with the chaos of the supply chain, and still spending every free second trying to make sure Elena felt supported. I thought she was lonely. I thought she was hurting because of the distance. Last night, I couldn't take the silence anymore. The dreams had become constant, a relentless loop of her betrayal playing behind my eyelids every time I closed them. I took an Uber across the city, desperate to just be near her, to see that everything was okay. I wanted to prove my own mind wrong. I wanted to look at her and see the woman I fell in love with, not the ghost from my nightmares. When I got there, she seemed surprised, maybe even a little annoyed, but she let me in. We fell into bed, and for a moment, the world felt right again. But the feeling didn't last. Around 3 a.m., I woke up. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Elena was out cold, her phone sitting on the nightstand, glowing faintly with a notification. I know people say you should never go through your partner's phone. I know they say if you find yourself doing that, the relationship is already over. But I needed to know. I needed the peace of mind that only the truth can provide. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. My thumb hovered over the screen, hesitant before I entered the passcode I'd seen her use 1,000 times. I started with the usual suspects. I checked her Instagram DMs. Nothing but memes from her friends. I checked Discord, just her gaming groups and some talk about work. I checked her text messages, just her mom complaining about the weather and some work-related group chats. For a second, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I felt like an idiot. I was ready to put the phone back and go back to sleep, ready to apologize to her in the morning for my lack of trust. Then I saw the Reddit icon. Elena always told me she hated Reddit. She said it was a place for losers and people with too much time on their minds. She said she didn't even have an account. But there it was, tucked away in a folder labeled Productivity. When I tapped it, the app opened instantly to her profile. My stomach dropped into my shoes. It wasn't just a casual browsing account. It was a curated library of everything she told me she despised. I started scrolling through the subreddit she followed. It was a laundry list of hardcore content. Redheads, Latinas, things I didn't even want to process at 3 in the morning. Spit roast, CNC hentai, Gwen Stacy 34, asshole through thong, BBW anal, Mexican women. It was relentless. It was a side of her I had never seen, a side that felt dark and predatory. I felt a cold numbness spreading from my chest to my fingertips. But it wasn't just the porn. That would have been one thing, a betrayal of our agreement, sure, but something we could maybe talk through. Then I saw the messages. She wasn't just looking, she was participating. She was sexting 5 different men. The conversations were graphic, detailed, and recent. While I was at work, while I was dreaming about her, she was sending photos, talking about things she wanted to do, things she had never even mentioned to me. She was telling these strangers how much she wanted them, how she was lonely, how her fiancé didn't understand her. She was building intimate connections with random people on the internet, while I was trying to figure out how to win over her parents. The room started to spin. I looked at her, sleeping there in her silk pajamas, looking so innocent, and I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her awake and demand to know why. Why would she do this? Why would she throw away 8 months of building a future for the validation of 5 faceless men on a subreddit? The worst part was her excuse. A few months ago, I had a run-in with an ex of mine. It was a messy situation. She cornered me in a parking lot, wouldn't let me leave, and things got physical in a way that left me feeling violated and ashamed. I didn't know how to tell Elena. I didn't know how to explain that I had been a victim of someone I used to trust. Out of fear that she wouldn't believe me or that she would think I was weak, I lied. I told her I had cheated. I took the blame for something I didn't want to do because the truth felt too heavy to carry. When I finally confronted her tonight, after hours of sitting in the dark staring at the evidence, she didn't even cry. She didn't apologize. She looked at me with this cold, detached expression and said she only did it because she thought I had cheated on her first. She used my trauma, the lie I told out of shame, as a weapon to justify her own calculated betrayal. She told me I was lonely because her dad wouldn't let me see her. She told me guys look at this stuff regularly and it's no big deal. She tried to make me feel like the one who was overreacting.
But I saw the dates on those messages, Elena. I saw that you started talking to these guys long before I ever had that encounter with my ex. You were looking for an exit before there was ever a reason to leave. You were entertaining other men while I was picking out engagement rings. Now, I'm sitting here in this apartment in Atlanta, listening to the city hum outside, and I realize I don't know the woman sitting across from me. She's explaining how she felt lonely, how I made her feel like she wasn't enough, how it was just cartoon stuff and hentai at first. She's trying to justify the unjustifiable, and the numbness is being replaced by a cold, hard clarity. She says she doesn't like porn. She said she only wants me. But her history says otherwise. The 5 men in her inbox say otherwise. The subreddits she checks every hour say otherwise. Every time I try to explain how I feel, she twists it. She makes it about her needs, her loneliness, her justification. She doesn't understand that the trust is gone. It didn't just break, it was pulverized. I can't stop seeing those images in my head. I can't stop reading those words she wrote to him. I look at her and I don't see my fiancé anymore. I see a predator who hides behind a mask of innocence. I see a woman who would rather seek the attention of strangers than work on the relationship she claimed was her everything. I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way. I don't know if I can ever trust another word that comes out of her mouth. Every time she tells me she loves me now, it sounds like a threat. Every time she touches me, I wonder who else she's been touching or wanting to touch while I wasn't looking. I'm 31 years old. I've worked too hard to build a life of integrity to let it be destroyed by someone who treats loyalty like a suggestion. I'm an operations manager, and I know when a system is broken beyond repair. And looking at Elena right now, seeing the lack of remorse in her eyes as she tries to gaslight me one more time, I realized the system didn't just fail, it was sabotaged from the inside.
I sat on the edge of her bed in her Buckhead apartment, the sound of her steady breathing behind me feeling like a personal insult. The Atlanta skyline was just beginning to bleed into a dirty gray dawn, but in my head, the fire from the night was still roaring. I stared at her phone screen, every new message I scrolled through hitting me like a professional boxer's hook to the gut. This wasn't just a lapse in judgment or a silly addiction to digital fantasies. This was a goddamn industry of deception. As an operations manager, I'm trained to see logical chains, to find the patterns in the chaos. And here, the pattern led straight into a bottomless pit. I discovered that one of the 5 guys she was sexting wasn't just some anonymous handle from a subreddit. He was a security guard at her office building in Midtown, a guy she greeted every single morning with a smile while I dropped her off at the curb, wishing her a great day. She was discussing the most intimate details of our lives with this man, mocking me, calling me predictable and a boring corporate drone who didn't know how to handle a woman like her. I felt a surge of nausea so violent I had to steady myself against the nightstand. My hand gripped the phone so hard I thought the glass would shatter. I remembered every single time she stayed late at the office, claiming she was finishing a high-stakes quarterly report. I remember the nights she claimed she was too exhausted for me to even touch her arm. Now I knew exactly where that energy had gone. But the rabbit hole went deeper. As I dug into her primary email account, hidden behind a password she thought was impenetrable, I found the digital trail of her financial betrayal. 2 months ago, I had drained $10,000 from my personal savings to pay off her credit card debt. I wanted us to have a clean slate before the wedding. I thought I was being a provider. Instead, I was funding her double life. She wasn't just messaging these men, she was buying them gifts. She was paying for hotel rooms on the outskirts of the city, places in Cobb County where she knew I'd never set foot. She was using my hard-earned money to betray me in cheap sheets while I was at home planning our honeymoon. At that moment, the bed shifted. Elena opened her eyes and saw me sitting there in the dark, her phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. There was no fear in her eyes, not at first. There was only a cold, calculating spark of fury. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She sat up, smoothed her hair with a chilling calmness, and spoke in a voice that made my skin crawl. She told me I had no right to invade her privacy. She told me I was a paranoid wreck and that my dreams were just a reflection of my own internal rot. She tried to snatch the phone, but I shoved her back. I showed her the screen, the messages with the guard, the hotel receipts, the photos she had sent that were meant only for my eyes. And that's when her mask finally disintegrated, revealing something far more predatory underneath. She started screaming that it was my fault she was lonely. She claimed that the incident with my ex, the one where I was cornered and violated in a parking lot, but lied and said I cheated because I was too ashamed to admit I was a victim, gave her the moral high ground. She weaponized my trauma. She told me my status as a victim made her sick and that she needed a real man who didn't whine about the past. It was gaslighting at a level I hadn't known was possible. She took the most painful moment of my life and used it to justify her calculated, month-long spree of infidelity. I realized then that her story about her father banning me from the house was a total fabrication. She had lied to her entire family just to clear her schedule for her lovers. The situation escalated when I started throwing my clothes into a duffel bag. She grabbed her phone and made a call. I thought she was calling the guard or one of her Reddit flings. Instead, she called her father. I stood there, paralyzed as her tone shifted instantly from a predatory snarl to a whimpering, terrified sob. She told him I had lost my mind. She told him I had broken into the apartment, that I was screaming at her, and that she was afraid for her life. She was creating a paper trail of domestic abuse right in front of me to protect her reputation. She was turning the victim into the villain in a matter of seconds. I realized that if I stayed another minute, I'd be leaving in handcuffs. I grabbed my bag and my laptop and headed for the door, but not before I performed one last sync of her cloud drive to my external hard drive. As I sat in my car in the parking garage, watching her father's truck scream into the complex, I felt a cold, hard clarity settle over me. I opened my laptop and went to her deleted folder. What I found there stopped my heart. It wasn't just more messages.
There were videos filmed in our guest room, videos filmed while I was at work, featuring men I recognized, men I had invited to our Super Bowl party, men I called my friends. The betrayal wasn't just a secret she kept, it was a collaborative effort. She had turned my entire life into a joke for her audience. She thought she had won because she had her father and a fake police report on her side. But she forgot that I manage systems for a living. I don't just find the leak, I seal it and account for the damage. If she wanted to play the victim, I was going to make sure the whole world saw the unedited footage of her performance. I drove toward a 24-hour diner in Decatur, my hands steady on the wheel for the first time in weeks. The numbness was gone, replaced by a singular, burning purpose. I spent the next 4 hours cataloging every piece of evidence, the timestamps that proved she was with other men while claiming to be at work, the financial transfers, and the videos that proved her friends were anything but. I started drafting a message to her father, but I deleted it. No, he wouldn't believe a text. He needed to see the truth in high definition. I began building a digital dossier that would leave her with nowhere to hide. I wasn't just going to leave Elena. I was going to dismantle the pedestal she had built for herself in this city. Every lie she told, every dollar she stole, and every man she brought into our home was about to become public record. She wanted a real man. She was about to find out what happens when a man with nothing left to lose decides to balance the scales. As the sun fully rose over Atlanta, I sent a single message to our wedding planner, CCing her entire bridal party and both our families. I told them the wedding was off and attached a link to a private folder. I watched the read receipts turn blue one by one. The explosion was coming, and for the first time in months, I wasn't the one standing in the blast zone. I was the one who pulled the pin.
The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour diner in Decatur flickered with a rhythmic, mechanical hum that matched the throbbing in my temples. I sat in a corner booth, the smell of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner clinging to the air, while the city of Atlanta began to wake up outside the window. On my laptop screen, the digital wreckage of my 8-month relationship was laid out in cold, hard folders. 8 months of building a life, 3 months of wearing a ring, and it all came down to a collection of time-stamped betrayals and graphic messages. My phone, sitting face down on the Formica table, started to vibrate. Then it stayed vibrating. The email had landed, the link to the shared folder containing the evidence of Elena's double life, the Reddit threads, the sex with those 5 men, the videos was now sitting in the inboxes of everyone who mattered to us. The first call was from her father. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear his voice, the voice of a man who just hours ago believed I was a monster based on his daughter's manufactured tears. Then came the texts from the friends I'd identified in the videos. One of them, a guy I'd known since college, sent a string of panicked messages begging me to talk, claiming it wasn't what it looked like. It's funny how people always say that when the evidence is in high definition. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The numbness that had settled over me since I first opened that Reddit app was being replaced by a sharp, icy clarity. I was no longer the victim of a gaslighting campaign. I was the architect of the truth. I spent the next 2 hours watching the fallout from a distance. I could see the activity on the shared folder, dozens of hits from IPs all over Georgia. Her bridesmaids, our mutual friends, her cousins, they were all seeing the innocent Elena for who she really was. I thought back to the dreams I'd been having for months. My subconscious had been screaming at me, trying to warn me that the woman sleeping next to me was a stranger. I told her about those dreams, and she had looked me in the eyes and told me I was crazy. She had used my vulnerability, my honesty, and my past trauma to make me doubt my own sanity. She had stood by while I blamed myself for being insecure, all while she was active on subreddits seeking the attention of strangers. The betrayal wasn't just the sex or the messages, it was the systematic dismantling of my character to hide her own. She had justified her actions by telling herself that I was lonely or that guys look at it regularly. But there's a massive chasm between casual consumption and active predatory engagement with 5 different people while engaged to be married. As I sat in that diner, I realized that for 8 months, I hadn't been in a relationship with a woman. I'd been in a relationship with a curated image. The real Alina was the one who sought out the validation of faceless men on the internet because the love of a good man wasn't enough to fill whatever void she had inside. Around 8 a.m., the diner door swung open, and I saw her father's truck pull into the lot. He didn't look like the angry, protective patriarch I had seen earlier. He looked aged, defeated. He walked toward my booth and slid into the opposite seat. He didn't say a word at first. He just stared at the table. I turned the laptop around and pressed play on a video of Elena in our guest room. He watched for 10 seconds before he closed his eyes and looked away. I told him everything. I told him about the Reddit accounts, the 5 men, the gifts she bought with my money, and the security guard at her office. I told him how she had faked that emergency call while I was standing there with my bags packed. He didn't defend her. There was no more gaslighting left in the tank. He told me that she had called him hysterical, claiming I had found some private things and was trying to ruin her, but seeing the scale of the deception changed everything. He apologized, a rare thing for a man like him. He told me he was taking her to her aunt's house in Savannah and that I wouldn't have to deal with her again. I told him that wasn't enough. I told him I wanted the engagement ring back, or I'd be filing a civil suit for the $10,000 she had essentially stolen from my savings under the guise of paying off debt.
The aftermath in Atlanta was swift. The wedding was canceled, the venue was notified, and the deposits, what little was left, were fought over by lawyers. I moved out of the Buckhead apartment that weekend. Every corner of that place felt tainted, like her lies were baked into the drywall. I moved into a smaller place near my office in Midtown, focusing entirely on my work at the logistics firm. My colleagues noticed the change. I was sharper, more ruthless in my negotiations, less willing to accept excuses. I had learned the hard way that when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them the first time. And if your gut tells you something is wrong, it's usually because the truth is too ugly for your conscious mind to accept. Months have passed now. The dreams about her cheating have finally stopped. I don't feel numb anymore. I feel liberated. I look back at those 8 months not as a waste of time, but as a masterclass in human deception. I survived a predator who tried to use my own assault and my own shame against me to cover her tracks. I realize now that her inability to understand my feelings wasn't a communication gap, it was a lack of empathy. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a provider she could manipulate while she lived her real life in the shadows of the internet. I still see the friends who were in those videos occasionally around the city. They look away when they see me. They know I have the files. They know I have the power to dismantle their lives the same way I dismantled hers. But I don't bother. They aren't worth the energy. I've realized that the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's living a life that is so far removed from their toxicity that they become nothing more than a footnote in my story. I am Marcus, I am 31 years old, and I am finally the master of my own narrative. The ring is gone, the woman is gone, and for the first time in a long time, I can look at myself in the mirror and know exactly who is looking back. I remember the last message she sent me weeks after the fallout. She tried one last time to play the victim, claiming she only looked at those things because she felt neglected. I didn't even reply. I just blocked the number. There is no room for negotiation with a person who uses your trauma as a weapon. Atlanta is a big city, but it's small enough that the truth travels fast. Her reputation is in tatters, her family is ashamed, and the man she tried to destroy is standing taller than ever. I took the $10,000 I recovered and invested it in a project that actually matters. I took the ring back to the jeweler and walked out with a watch that reminds me every second that my time is too valuable to waste on a lie. The lessons I learned in those dark hours in the Buckhead apartment are the foundation of who I am now. I'm more observant, I'm more guarded, but I am also more free. I don't look for monsters under the bed anymore because I know they're usually sitting right next to you, smiling and telling you everything is fine. Elena thought she could hide in the subreddits and the DMs, but she forgot that light always finds a way in. And once the light hit her, there was nothing left but the shadow of the person I thought I loved. I'm moving forward, one step at a time, through the streets of Atlanta, knowing that I am no longer the man who can be fooled. I am the man who survived,
and that is a power she can never take away.